Hey soccer fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast. I'm your host Nick, and I am so glad that I waited until today, Tuesday, August 19th, to record this episode instead of the usual Monday night, because we got some fire transfer news to discuss. We have an outgoing player, we have an incoming player, nothing officially done yet, but if it's getting this kind of press, it's likely going to happen soon. But first, we're going to recap the Chicago Fire's match this weekend at SeatGeek Stadium against Midwestern rival, the arch enemy, as I like to punily refer them as, St. Louis City. The Chicago Fire get a 3-2 victory. Goals from Kuipers, Zinkernagel, and Gutierrez were more than enough to handle the goals from Ostrak and Hartl for St. Louis. And I gotta say, it was some of the most fun that I had at a Chicago Fire game in a long time, or just at any soccer game. It was a blast. I saw some people from St. Louis criticizing the small fan base that was there. I think there was just over 15,000 announced. But again, you had thunderstorms. I noticed a lot of families ended up leaving once they ended up delaying the game due to the lightning strike, so there were less people there. But those that stayed made a heck of a lot of noise. And by the way, I'm just kind of sick of St. Louis saying, "Oh, you guys can't fill your stadium." Like, find something new. Find something new to talk about this team. Some of the other accounts also said that deep dish pizza isn't as good as any other pizzas, so they lose all credibility on that argument alone. But I will say, it was so much fun. I think the weather, too, the rain delay, the lightning delay, just helped kind of bottle up a little bit of that anxious energy, that excitement going into the match. And the fans were then more than willing to let it out and cheer on the team. We get the 16th minute goal from Kuipers that keeps the fans into it. Energy stays up, and they take that 1-0 lead into halftime. However, there was a strong contingent of St. Louis fans who were just waiting for something to cheer for. They got that in the 47th minute. Ostrak gets the goal almost off of the opening kickoff. It's that opening possession. And again, we see with Ostrak's goal and Hartl's goal, there's a little bit of a defensive breakdown, miscommunication. They're not clearing it out. They're not tracking the right runners. They're not getting set in the best positions. Defenders are running into each other. I think that was on Hartl's goal, allowing them to take these shots from within 10, 12 yards. Not much Chris Brady can do when those balls are being played from that close perimeter. Close proximity. When they're taking close shots, it's hard for the keeper to stop it. That's the point I'm trying to make. But what's great about this Fire team is that they continue to battle, they continue to fight. It takes them only 8 more minutes for Zinkernagel to get his goal, making St. Louis defenders look silly. Go watch the highlights, and you will literally see a St. Louis defender flailing as Zinkernagel dekes the shot and dribbles right around him, and then puts it low near post. And I think the Fire scored all 3 goals to Roman Berkey's left, and just not putting it past him to the left. They squeezed them in just inside the post. These shots by all 3 players were perfectly placed. The skill level taken to tuck it just inside the post, for Kuipers to do it off the one touch, for Zink to do it after dribbling past 2 defenders with his left foot, and for Gutierrez to do it off of one touch to set up, to shoot, and then put just enough of a bend to get it around the defender and around Berkey's outstretched arms. These were difficult finishes that the Fire players performed in order to score their goals. So phenomenal goals, absolutely worth going back and watching the highlight reel, the match recap. I've done it twice already, watching it with the kids a couple times because they did not get a chance to stay up and watch the match. But I will say, getting back to kind of the match atmosphere itself, it was so much fun. Even when we were kind of huddled and packed in underneath some of the sheltered areas, I'm talking to other fans. Everyone's kind of in a good, happy mood. I was talking with a couple of St. Louis fans, the one who had moved up from St. Louis to Chicago, so she and her family were there. They made a weekend of going to the Cubs game and then going to the Fire game. It was a lot of fun. So, Colleen, Hunter, if you're listening, I hope it was so much fun talking with you guys during the rain delay. I hope you guys enjoyed the match, even though your St. Louis didn't get the result here on the road. Also, I had the absolute pleasure of speaking with Paul Cadwell And for those of you who want the official title, he is the Senior Vice President, Community Programs, Engagement, and Facilities. But for people who've been following the club, Paul's been with the Chicago Fire since 1997. He is one of the first employees of the club and has been with the club. I think he's one of 2 or 3 employees who have been with the club during its entire existence. He was standing up above the supporter section on the concourse just hanging out. Got a chance to go and say, "Hey, Paul, great to meet you. I'm Nick Pateras. I do Feed the Fire." He goes, "Yeah, I know everything that goes on and when it comes to the Chicago Fire." And I was like, "Oh, all right. He's plugged in. He knows what's going on. He's listening." So there's someone out there checking things out on social media, everyone. So your comments are heard. I will just say that. But it was great talking to Paul just about the vision that Greg brought, the vision that Joe brought when he first became the majority owner of the club, and just I think Paul enjoys his work that much more now that you have such a vision. If I call Joe Mansueto and Greg Berhalter visionaries, is that too strong a word? Like there's such vision behind what they want to do and such structure and how they want to build and a plan for how they want to build. So Paul was more than happy just to chat and talk and share some stories. So Paul, if you are listening to this episode, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. Thanks for taking the time to talk to one of my friends and neighbors up here in Arlington Heights, Matt, who it was his first ever Chicago Fire game. So he got to come, he got to meet some execs, he got to see a victory, he got a rain delay, he got a little bit of everything. So it was a lot of fun, really enjoyed it. There were fans all around me we were high-fiving. So Tony, Joel, thank you guys for making it fun in the stands. Getting a chance to high-five you guys, your kids, celebrate and scream along with everybody. It was a great time. But getting back to the match itself, the Chicago Fire are still undefeated at SeatGeek Stadium this season across all competitions, including U.S. Open Cup. This particular match, though, the stats were a little closer than I would have liked them to be. I think the Fire controlled most of the game. If I'm using the eye test, I think they dominated that first half. I think they controlled most of the second half. You saw Gutierrez feeling himself. He had his confidence. He put 2 shots just outside the far post before getting his goal. You saw Kuipers and Zinkernagel taking guys off the dribble, making their slashing runs, making the St. Louis defense spin in circles, look silly. Again, not a strong point. And as I said in my preview episode, St. Louis really doesn't have a playmaker. They really are relying on their high pressing to turn over a team. They're really relying on Roman Berkey even. You saw how quick he was taking his goal kicks. His goal kicks, he's launching them. He's wanting to get Klaus on a breakaway or a one-on-one scenario up there to either draw a yellow card or to get a shot off. So you see how they're relying on these quick plays, long strikes, pressing turnovers rather than the actual skill and creativity of their players. And fortunately, the Chicago Fire were able to overcome the 2 goals that St. Louis did score. Looking at the stats, though, Chicago ended up with about 51% possession, 19 shots, 5 on goal. They had 7 blocked, 472 total passes at an 88% passing accuracy. So fantastic possession game from the Fire here. 6 corners. I did not get to Portillo's in time to get my free hot dog. Keep kicking myself that I didn't do it. The Fire had 4 crosses, 2 offsides. They had an XG of 2.6, so a little bit outperformed their expected goals tonight, which is fantastic. And again, the shots that went in, I think were low percentage shots, other than I think the Zinkernagel one was a fairly higher percentage shot because he was able to get into the center of the box and let fly from close range. But I would say Gutierrez shot, Kuipers' one touch in from that amazing cross by Gutman, the early ball in, like he and Kuipers have their timing in sync. It's a beautiful thing to watch. So just outperforming their XG a little bit, which is great. Brady's credited with 1 save. The defense had 3 clearances and 8 fouls, but the all-important 0 cards for the Fire as opposed to 4 for St. Louis. Looking a little bit at they did not have the 5-minute intervals broken down on the MLS website here, so I guess we'll have to stick with my initial eye test that the Fire controlled the game. But yeah, it was, from a statistical standpoint, decent numbers. I would have liked to see them dominate St. Louis a little bit more, given the way Chicago played possession, given the way that they were able to break the press a lot of the times, and that the 2 goals were kind of flukes, again, coming at the beginning of the second half and kind of on a defensive scramble. However, all that counts is the 3 points. Now, what's really nice in the aftermath of these results that the Fire are earning here is we're starting to see them get a little bit more attention from around the league. Nice to see. Now, the power rankings, they did drop 1 spot down to the 14th, but now the league is taking notice more of Brian Gutierrez. This was the post-game Gutierrez Fest. He got to talk post-game, and we'll get into some of his quotes in a minute. But according to MLSsoccer.com's J. Sam Jones, he says, "It always feels like Chicago are on the brink of giving up a last-second winner or equalizer. They avoided that trend this weekend when Brian Gutierrez delivered an 87th-minute winner in their 3-2 win over St. Louis. The Fire have earned 11 points over the last 5 games and are still clinging to one of the final playoff spots in the stacked East. They've got 8 games left to hold off the New Yorks and break a playoff-less streak that started in 2018. And in fact, the MLS energy moment of the match day was Gutierrez's game-winning goal." So here's what Gutierrez had to say about that in the postgame. "I just saw that there was space when Phil gave me the ball," Gutierrez told reporters. "I think my touch helped me a lot. I just didn't think twice about it and said, why not have a shot? Why not have a go? Thankfully, it went in. This was an important victory for the club as our objective is to make the playoffs," Gutierrez said. So if you go back and watch the replays, you see St. Louis finally, after 87 minutes, decides to collapse 2 and 3 defenders on Zinkernagel as he's making a run in the center of the box. He has to kind of turn away, and he lays the ball off to Gutierrez, and Gutierrez does the perfect thing with his first touch. He doesn't hesitate. He puts his first touch like 3 yards away from him into the space that Zinkernagel and the defender from St. Louis vacated when they collapsed onto Zinkernagel. And he was able to then give himself that space to shoot, to pick his location. As they say, aim small, miss small. And he aimed right inside that corner, and he hit it perfectly. So he didn't miss small. He made it. But you could tell he wasn't just trying to blast one at the goal. He wasn't trying to be fancy and go top bins. He picked his spot, that low corner near post, and just bent it right inside the near post. It was an excellent everything from Gutierrez, from being available for Zinkernagel to setting himself up to the actual finishing touch. And we've seen spurts during the course of the season of Gutierrez and Zinkernagel really getting a feel for each other, linking up, doing some great one-touch passing with each other. So I hope this can continue and that we see a lot more of it down the stretch to bring them into the playoffs and hopefully win a few playoff series and games. So it was a great moment for Gutierrez and Zinkernagel. Also, Zinkernagel named to the first team of the match day, and Gutierrez was selected to the team of the match day bench for his efforts. This is Zinkernagel's 2nd consecutive week on the team of the match day. Did he have a goal and an assist on this match, I feel like? So in looking at the summary on MLSsoccer.com, it shows that Gutierrez's goal is unassisted. Maybe they'll change that and give Zinkernagel the assist on it. But a goal and a setup, another key pass, we could say, to add to his fantastic season. So Torben, if you're listening, hats off. Whatever you did for Philip growing up, please let me know so I can replicate it here with my voice. He's having a phenomenal season. Absolutely fun to watch. He's enjoying himself, and people are enjoying watching him play, and people are enjoying playing with him to the point, and now we're going to talk a little bit about some of that transfer news, to the point where Andre Franco, who's joining the Chicago Fire on loan from FC Porto, was announced at earlier this week, but introduced at the match. He'll be wearing the number 10 for the Fire. His people actually reached out to the Chicago Fire organization to be a part of what's going on there. Now, we know Felipe Selicaya, who is part of Greg Berhalter's staff, has a lot of connections in Europe and overseas. So it was through those connections that Franco's side and Franco himself was able to get in touch with the Fire organization. But number one, I've said it before, I think this also is part of the Chicago Fire's efforts in Portugal. Jay Davila, Leo Barroso, and now Andre Franco, but also just the fact that there is a vision, a structured vision, and one that can be delivered by Greg Berhalter, by Dave Baldwin, by Joe Mansueto, and everybody top down in that organization is focused on their role in this vision. So great to see that players are taking notice. Good players in their prime. This isn't a Son or a Mueller who's at the end of their career, who still are very good and who are still going to contribute a lot in MLS. This is a player in his prime saying, I'm going to go check out Chicago. I mean, he could be playing in Champions League for Porto. He's played in Champions League with Porto. And he's played in Club World Cup with Porto. And he's like, I want to go to Chicago. So fantastic developments here for the Chicago Fire. Continuing on with some of the transfer news that I hinted at earlier, defender Diego Konincks has been loaned out to Valor FC of the Canadian Premier League for the remainder of the 2025 season. So hopefully he can get some more minutes at a little bit of a higher level at Valor FC. But the big news, there's two kind of big headlines here. First of all, the outgoing news. Carlos Teran left training early. Was it today or yesterday? Because it's been reported that he has been transferred to Club Atlético Pamanense in Brazil's second division, in Serie B. This is a club that was recently relegated from Brazil's top flight, transferred out a lot of players, made a lot of money, and is now rebuilding to push to get back into Serie A down in Brazil. And so they see Carlos Teran as a prime defender, as a central piece to their club going forward to get back into the top flight in Brazil. So we know that Carlos Teran has always fancied himself better than MLS. And to be honest, he probably is. If the guy could have stayed healthy and maybe gotten his mind right a little earlier, he probably would be playing at a top league in Europe right now. And the Fire would have had a lot of offers for him in the offseason. But unfortunately, and I don't mean to go back over too much history here, but after C.J. Brown was no longer the coach, the defensive coach, you saw Teran really struggle in the back line there, losing his temper, losing his head, making mental mistakes, then also just not being able to stay healthy. So it makes me wonder if there were some things going on in training that maybe he wasn't as motivated in training, or perhaps not being treated as, I'm totally speculating here, I'm pulling stuff out of the air. Just, maybe there's something going on with the training center and the facilities where he wasn't taking full advantage of it. I don't know. Again, it raises a lot of questions when you have such a prime player like that in a new training facility picking up multiple injuries. But what I will say is Teran always wanted to play at a higher level than MLS, and you can't blame the guy. He's coming from Colombia, wants to be on the Colombian national team, and the only way he's going to do that is to play at a higher level. We've seen that from the Colombian national team coach, that he wants players outside of MLS, though I think he's starting to soften a little bit on that, if I recall some of their more recent lineups. But that's what Teran wanted. So for him to go to Serie B in Brazil kind of makes me scratch my head and say, is this guy really... he had aspirations to play in like League One or the Premier League, or in Italy, and now he's going to Brazil's Serie B. Well, if this club is going to be pushing into the top flight next season, and then he's going to be playing in the top flight in Brazil, potentially a top 5 club in Brazil, Club World Cup aspirations, using that as a stepping stone to get into say a top flight team in Europe or so, maybe it's the right move. Maybe take one step back to take 2 steps forward in another year or two. He's only 24 years old right now. He's got at least another 7 or 8 years of his professional career ahead of him, hopefully. But again, this isn't the deal to Lens in France that we were talking about earlier on in the season. So hopefully this is something, like I said, that Teran is happy to get back to South America, to continue to improve, to get some new coaching, Not that Berhalter and the staff were doing better. They brought him up a couple levels. So maybe now he can develop further his game and then go off and play in a bigger league and get some national team views. That's what I'm hoping for Teran. In the meantime, I'd love to hear what the reported transfer fee is, because if the Fire can get a few million for this guy, get some money, help pay off some other stuff, get some salary cap relief, that would be great news for them. But it also shows that this is a club who then can put players into other top clubs around the world. Loved watching Carlos Teran. One of my favorite players to watch in his tenure here. The man was a physical presence. Health was a problem. Cards were a problem at times. But watching him come back from his most recent injury and then just play so well over the last couple of games, getting involved in the offense, locking down on the defense, was fantastic to see. Loved meeting him at the Meet the Players party a few weeks back. He was just laughing, having a good time. Wish him well. Wish him nothing but the best. I think this was a really good partnership, both for club and player. The club got some good games out of him, some great performances out of him. They were able to develop him and also get something back on the business side of it. And Teran was able to prove himself at the MLS level and make it known that he's ready to jump to the next level, wherever it may be, Brazil, Europe, or otherwise. So I think this is this was a fantastic pairing for these two parties here. The other bit of transfer news, now the incoming transfer news here. Joel Waterman, most recently of Montreal, has been reported to be linked with the Fire, and the deal is all but done. Thank you to Maxime Truman and Alex Calabrese on Twitter for posting all of that, and also thank you to Tim Hatza of Men in Red 97 for posting some other additional information that I referred to in today's episode about some of these players, about Andre Franco contacting the club. Appreciate you guys doing the great journalistic stuff so that I can just have my fun fan reacts here, right? So that we can all know what's going on. But yes, Joel Waterman of CF Montreal is now going to be part of the Chicago Fire. And I sent a quick message to my friends over at The Ball is Round Montreal, a CF Montreal podcast, and I said, what's the scouting report on this tall drink of water here? And the response I got was, Joel Waterman is good, but hot-headed. A very reliable backup, but has a tendency to get yellow cards and the occasional red, can also play defensive mid. And honestly, that's how I remember him. When I watched Montreal play, especially when they played against the Fire, I remember Waterman trying to bang around Kuipers and Zinkernagel a bit, being a little overly aggressive, chirping at the referee constantly as well. Not something I like to see out of my players, but I'd rather have him on my team than have to play against him. And he is going to replace a physical presence in Carlos Teran. He is going to continue to push the development of Sam Rogers. Maybe even Mauricio Pineda can get back in the mix for center back rotating spot if they decide to keep using Jay and Acosta a little bit more as we get into the end of the season here. So that's something else to keep an eye on. But Joel Waterman looks like he will be coming to the Chicago Fire. Now, Joel Waterman is Canadian. He is was born in Langley, British Columbia, Canada. So the Fire are going to need to pick up an additional international roster spot, it looks like, by the time the transfer window ends or before they actually technically roster him. At least I think that's how it all works out here. But just to give you a little bit on the new defender, he's 29 years old, 172 pounds, 6'2", so big dude. He has been playing in MLS with CF Montreal since 2020. So this is his 6th season in the league. He has spent his entire professional career with CF Montreal. Let me just let's pull up the old Wikipedia here and see. No, he has been with a few other teams before that. Kitsap Pumas up in Washington State, TSS FC Rovers in British Columbia, Calgary Foothills in Calgary, Alberta, Cavalry FC, also based around Calgary in Alberta. So he played for those 4 teams a year each, considered senior teams, and then made his move to CF Montreal. He also has 10 appearances with the Canadian men's senior team since 2022. So that is the history there. He has a contract through 2027 with a club option for 2028, I believe, at least if we can keep the Wikipedia reporting at a somewhat credible level here. So he does give the Fire a couple more years of control and a little bit of roster flexibility should they want to move on from him at any point in time. So that is the background on Joel Waterman. I think it's a good move. I mean, obviously the Fire have needed center back help and defensive help throughout the entire course of the season. Whether it's been integrating new and young players, whether it's been filling gaps for injured players, whether it's been just kind of someone who can help Chris Brady out a little bit in the back there as they learn how to play out of the back and build possession and make the right moves and things like that. So I think this is a good signing for the Chicago Fire. I don't know if I would have said Joel Waterman was my first pick for an in-league transfer here, and we don't have the numbers yet on this deal, but I think it's a solid move. It's a guy who knows the league, who's ready to step in, who can contribute. Now, a lot of people are worried that he's a bit hot-headed. I think under Greg Berhalter's coaching staff, he will be just fine, especially if he's paired along next to Jack Elliott. I think having Jack on the pitch, having Berhalter and his staff off the pitch will keep that hot-headedness in check. We know what Berhalter puts a premium on when he recruits players. Talent, of course, and how they fit into his system, but also the character that these players have. And so we saw him get into it with Joe Bamba a little bit coming off the bench, that Bamba wasn't hustling and ended up causing the Fire to be down to 10 men for a few minutes because they couldn't make the substitution in. Selassie was not allowed to enter the pitch for a minute because Bamba came off too slowly for the referee's liking. You saw Berhalter have an exchange with him, so he's holding his players to certain expectations, and it wouldn't surprise me to see Bamba start on the bench in the next match against Philly in favor of Haile Selassie, but I think the results are going to be a little bit more important. I'm sure Greg's going to run him at practice and training, and if Bamba responds, then he could keep that starting spot. But regardless, I think Waterman's hot-headedness will be kept in check. It's the first season. We've seen good things from Berhalter and his staff. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they know what they're doing, they know what their scouting says, and they know that they can handle Joel Waterman. I also wonder if there's a little Berhalter, Jesse Marsch conversations going on in the background about him saying, hey, you had this guy, in some of your Canadian camps. What do you think about him? I wonder if there were some text messages exchanged or some phone calls made just to kind of get a little bit of intel. I just wonder. Again, pure speculation here. Let's see, what else did I want to say about the Chicago Fire before we sign off for today? Just let's recap the standings real quick. After this victory from the Chicago Fire, 3 more points, the Fire sit in 9th place in the Eastern Conference. They're on 39 points. They are even with 10th place Red Bulls. Chicago Fire currently owns the tiebreaker on goal differential. Both clubs have 11 wins. The Fire have one more goal differential than the Red Bulls do, so they've got that tiebreaker. Also, Chicago Fire has a game in hand right now on the Red Bulls, so hopefully they can get a little bit more separation out of that. The Fire are 2 points behind New York City, who's in the 8th place. New York City, though, has 1 game in hand on the Chicago Fire, so they have the advantage there in the standings. Not to mention, they have 1 extra win, but have the same goal differential, +6, as the Chicago Fire. Now, sitting 2 places above the Chicago Fire, Charlotte with 44 points. It'll be very difficult for Chicago to catch Charlotte, 5 points ahead with, 8 games left in the season? Roughly, between the two teams. Charlotte's played 27 games, so the Fire do have a game in hand on them. And the Fire also have the same +6 goal differential as Charlotte. However, Charlotte has 3 more wins than the Chicago Fire at this point, so any tiebreaker would likely favor Charlotte, because as we know in MLS, the first tiebreaker is number of wins, which I know most people are used to goal differential being the first tiebreaker. Most leagues do that. Kind of like it being number of wins, because it makes teams want to go for it just a little bit more, especially at the end of that season when maybe games don't mean as much supposedly, or there's not as much excitement because there's no relegation. it does provide a little bit of excitement. It does provide a little bit more excitement and teams going for it. A little bit more strategy and management down to the end of the season there. So, again, the Fire, 5 points behind 7th place Charlotte, 2 points behind 8th place New York City, tied on points, but owning the second tiebreaker with Red Bulls, 39 points for the 9th and 10th team. Just to kind of recap the East as a whole, we've got Cincinnati sitting atop the Eastern Conference. And are they atop the Shield standings? Let's take a look, because they are tied on 52 points with Western Conference leader San Diego, and San Diego currently sitting on top of the Shield standings. Both teams at 52 points, both teams with 16 wins, 7 losses, and 4 draws, but San Diego's got the plus 19 goal differential as opposed to Cincinnati's plus 8. 2nd through 4 in the Eastern Conference, Philly, Nashville, and Orlando. Philadelphia, who just signed Jacob Lesnes to an extension, so something Fire fans are going to have to watch out for this upcoming weekend. They've got their next match at Philly. Then Miami sitting in the 5th spot. So let's say the Chicago Fire end up in the 8 or 9 spot. They'll likely play New York City, potentially Charlotte or Red Bulls, but likely New York City if things ended, especially if things ended right now, and then they get to go to Cincinnati. You know, of these clubs that are in the top 4 in the East, Cincy, Philly, Nashville, Orlando, I kind of like going to Cincinnati as opposed to going to Philly or to Nashville, where the Fire have not been good, or to Orlando, where they are fantastic at home, 7 home wins on the season, but they do just seem to play at a little bit of a higher level down there. I wouldn't want to be playing in front of those Orlando fans if I was the Chicago Fire, so I kind of like the matchup against Cincy. Maybe they drop down into the 2nd spot and the Fire end up in the 7th seed. That would be fantastic. I would love that as well. But that's what we have to look forward to, Chicago Fire fans. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening. Please make sure you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the show, promote it on social media, tell your friends at bars, tell your friends from all over the MLS world that we have something really great going on here in Chicago with the Fire, and that you can find all about it here on the Feed the Fire podcast. Thanks again. Let's go Fire.